Ellie Price reporting, and we've been joined by the Minister for Constitutional Reform, John Penrose, and by Labour's Gloria De Piero, who is the Shadow Minister for Voter Registration. Welcome to both of you. John Penrose, first of all, let's look at the figures, because as of May, when the figures were last collated, there were 1,858,322 missing, in inverted commas, electors. In other words, voters who've yet to put themselves through the individual electoral register. What ground have you made since May to close that figure down?
We haven't got official figures yet, but we're starting to get some returns in, and it looks like a lot of those figures are being substantially reduced. I can't give you a final number yet. We'll be able to give you one fairly short.
Half, or
I can't give you a fair answer yet. But what I can tell you is that after all that effort, which you just mentioned, of contacting all these people 9 times, what we will have done is worked out who has moved house or died and who's a genuine voter with a pulse. If they're a genuine voter with a pulse, we'll have put them back on the electoral register. They will be registered. They will be able to vote in May. And even if they aren't, we can re-register them in 3 minutes or less online.
Right. I mean, it would be a huge failure, wouldn't it, if that number or anything close to that number remained not on an electoral register?
Well, it would be a huge failure if genuine electors remain not on the electoral register, yes. And one of the things which we need to do, which is a kind of a parallel but important issue, is find the people who aren't registered at all at the moment. It's not a question of crossing them off. They're not on the register at all to begin with. And there's groups out there which really need to be found and persuaded to vote and got on the register, because otherwise our democracy is incomplete.
I mean, it sounds like they're making a huge effort here, Gloria De Piero.
So the Independent Electoral Commission, the body that's set up by Parliament to enhance democracy, I mean, you've got to ask what's the point in setting up these bodies if you ignore their advice, said don't limit it, don't bring forward the transition to individual electoral registration to December. They were very, very clear on that. They said you would risk losing electors, and those are some of the figures that you've seen. Now, I have no doubt that some people, that those numbers have fallen now, but actually, you know, I was just doing a quick Google search. I mean, Camden, nearly 8,000. There's only 10 days left for inclusion on that register. Camden, 8,000, Reading, 5,000. My own constituency is about 650, but the differences in those areas, it's people in private rented housing, people that move on a lot, often people who are poorer because they can't get mortgages, who are most at risk from that. And that is a real worry to me.
Why did you bring it forward? Why did you bring it forward when you didn't have to and you were advised not to?
Well, a couple of reasons. Firstly, the Electoral Commission isn't the only person giving me advice. So, for example, you already mentioned the Association of Electoral Administrators. They're the people on the front line. They thought it was a good idea. But also because there's some really important elections coming up next May. There's London Mayor, there's Scottish Parliament, there's a variety of local elections around England, and there's also Welsh Assembly elections. We need to have an accurate register for those elections as much as anything else. And I think it makes sense, after you've contacted people 9 times, you've got to say that real voters aren't being crossed off.
How many more times can you contact people, Gloria? And also this issue of gossip.
Could I present myself as a case study?
Go on.
So I moved house in London, where I'm in the private rented sector. I started paying my council tax in July, so there was perfect, reasonable time to data match me. Nobody contacted me. I didn't receive one letter. I called them a couple of weeks ago to check what was going on, and that I would have fallen off the register. So actually, I'm a living, breathing example. I am alive and kicking.
You are. We can testify to that.
Nobody contacted me, John.
But the point there is, Gloria, that you aren't actually on the register at the moment. So it's not a question of anyone crossing you off. You're a different kind of problem, which is we need to find people like you who aren't on it in the first place. But if you're not on it at the beginning, I can't cross you off, even if I wanted to, which I don't.
Gloria, what about the issue of ghost voters? I mean, some of these people, a lot of these people, dare I say, are bogus, aren't they? So there will be a clearing up of the electoral register, which is what the government says it's doing.
So if you'd have given it an extra year, you would have given electoral registration officers the time to knock off the bogus ones, re-register the ones that were likely to fall off. It's actually just really common sense. We don't want to lose people who want to vote with those that shouldn't be allowed to vote.
But we've had 18 months of doing it. We've had a long time. And I keep on coming back to it, Gloria. I think you're confusing people who are on the electoral register who might be wrongly crossed off. And I agree with you, that's a good thing to do with people who aren't on the electoral register at all, which is what you are at the moment. And those you can't cross off because they aren't on it in the first place.
Can I just, before I come to you, DP, there is a political point. I've spoken to Labour MPs who have even gone as far as saying, in fact, I think Jeremy Corbyn used the word of gerrymandering here. I mean, if the remaining 4% don't sign up, that is good news, isn't it, for the Tories?
No, not particularly, actually. I mean, firstly, it is bad news for any Democrat if a genuine elector, as I said, with a pulse, doesn't sign up.
But the byproduct would be it would benefit, even if you're not as cynical as that. The byproduct would be because many of these happen to be in Labour constituencies.
Some are in Labour constituencies, but some are also in Conservative constituencies. I mean, for example, Kensington and Chelsea, not exactly a redoubt of the left, is one of the top.
I'll give you that one.
I know it's unfashionable to say, that the Lords have any say in this, but
you might get lynched.
I actually sat and listened to the debate on this in the Lords, and the one thing the Lords do, they do know what they're talking about from all different parties, and some of the speeches from Liberals and Labour were extremely good on this. And I'm crossbench, so I don't have any political acts in this. The bit I could not understand was the timing issue, and I can't see why it's become party political. You see, what do we want? We want 100% inclusivity on our own. We want to stop people voting early and often, as Kennedy once said. And we want to stop electoral fraud. And we want to make it as representative as possible. Now, that has to be in the interest, as you rightly said, Minister, it has to be in the interest of all Democrats. So I can't see why we've now got this polemic situation where some people are saying, oh, Tories are doing this disgusting, and the other people are saying, oh, you're only doing this because you're Labour and you hate them and all this. Why can't we come together and say, we'll give you more time, but we'll give you more time on only one condition. You come together and do this together. And if you did that, and you really root it out, put some money into really rooting it out and making sure that these people who are cheating and pretending to be other people go to prison, frankly, and the people who are lost in the system. I can't imagine anybody would be lost in the system if they were an MP, but clearly you are. I would like to think this was in the interest of every party. You'd need more time. But then in return, you ought to join together to get it sorted.
Well, why can't you smelling the rat at the 1st of December and the boundary changes?
And is this about the boundary review? I mean, in the end, is that what people are going to say? It's certainly what Labour will be saying, that the outcome of the individual voter registration drive determines the boundary review, which the government wants to bring in.
To the extent that we want the boundary review to be based on accurate voter rolls, yes, of course, that's going to have a factor. But it's also about these elections next May. I mean, if we don't get this right, then you'll have a whole load of people who are potentially dead who've got a right to vote in May.
We need to have a cleared-up list before those May elections, which would be very important for Jeremy Corbyn particularly.
So you can go. So give them extra time.
But they haven't got time, though, have they? Post-December
we are going to lose voters. As I say, the most recent figure, 7,000 in Camden. It's just not good enough, and there are things you could do to improve it, like registration of students in halls of residence, another huge problem.
We've pushed out quite a lot of money to help people do the checks that you're describing,
if you gave
to
it
do the extra
year,
checks.
Everyone could block register, tick a box, and every student could go.
Is that going to happen? There's not going to happen, is it?
We've already done it.
All right.
Yes.
That's what we want to do, along with the advice from the Electoral Commission.
Well, a bit like the government, we've run out of time on this, so I have to put an end to it.